Let's make sure everything's up. Gonna go ahead and turn off monitoring. There we go. Yeah. Trying to make sure everything's working in here on that end. Get OBS down. All right. I don't know why I picked these oversized loads, because honestly they're a massive pain in the butt, because unfortunately for you, SES doesn't really think too logically about, well, that's going to be a whole different tangent, and I'm just going to go rabbit trailing off somewhere. But suffice to say, the oversized integration into the normal systems and features of the game does not work well. That snowballs from the fact that a lot of the design of the areas is too small for reality. I don't know if that's because the developers are from Eastern Europe and they're not used to the same kind of conditions we are here. But as a North American commercial driver, a lot of the entries are too small. The way that they commonly unload and load oversized trailers in real life is not to put them in a specific parking space in a specific drop lot. They drive them out to a location, and if it's something that's maneuverable, they disconnect the gooseneck and the front connections, pull away. The excavator or whatever large piece of equipment drives onto the flatbed. The tractor backs up to it, locks in, resets and links into with, if they have a gooseneck again, locks it back in. They get everything aired up, everything gets secured properly. They chain it, do all of their checks on their equipment and load securement, and then they go. There isn't this, oh, you're going into this very specific spot in this very specific location and going in at a perfect angle. No. The equipment, the cranes, whatever is loading whatever object on always comes to the truck in most of these cases. If you have been around oversized drivers in reality, it's like being around the actual commercial drivers. It does kind of drive me nuts that the implementation of oversized in the game is very clunky because of already existing issues with the way that the design of infrastructure and entryways and where they put this stuff in is, because it isn't realistic, and I get it, but it makes it very frustrating when you're trying to do these kind of loads in game and you can't get access to the areas properly, no matter how big or small your powered unit is, because there's a certain type of oversize that they will not let you pull in the game with a regular gooseneck. It has to be a multi-point articulated, it has to be a flatbed like this with all this extra stuff on. And I'm actually going to bother to turn the music back on, because, yeah, I guess. But I'm going to keep the master volume down a little bit. It's just, yeah, there's some implementation in this game, and oversize is one of the most frustrating parts. There's a lot of stuff that I can work around with standard size trailers in this game that, just because from experience and from personal experiences, you don't maneuver or turn around equipment like this. It gets moved into position, it gets ready for you. So I might have to bump the game audio down one more time, because it looks like that's going to be really high in the mix. So yeah, I'm going to put that down to like 20%, just so you guys aren't absolutely blown out by game audio. I'm going to go ahead and turn my beacons on, because we're going to need them, but just for immersion's sake. I guess I wanted to stream a little bit talking like I'm pretty incoherent and I don't tend to follow subjects very well. I do have experience with corporate companies and commercial driving. I would kind of like to like there's different ways to really get into the commercial truck driving industry. There is there is going to private schools and locations. There is going through corporate companies through their driver training programs. There's a lot of community colleges locally in most major metro areas that that have pretty decent programs related to CDL training. I, in particular, went through the training program with my college locally, but this was, of course, postgraduate, like after I actually graduated from college. And they were a little bit more straightforward, serious, and comprehensive in their training. There's a lot, unfortunately, it's something you have to really look for and ask around from drivers, like what good schools are, because all of them tend to scorn CDL schools, but they also are unwilling to help you as a new driver. I have a very sinking feeling that this is not going to allow me to load it. This is one of those locations in this game where it doesn't like to be cooperative, and you have to absolutely nail the angle getting into here. And as I said kind of at the beginning of this game is not forgiving at all about the angle and the location. If you were doing this in reality, you wouldn't be doing this like this. I wouldn't have to turn. They would have put this space out in a very easily accessible area in the middle of their drop yard. They would have loaded me. But you are pulling off of a residential road with a heavy-duty powered unit that has look at this. I've got 4 axles total. I've got my single steer axle and then 3. I've got there's a dead axle there. But this is not, you would not normally do this. But I've already had problems with this very same place because it does not care how close, how accurate you are. You have to be in the lane. I love how game mechanics are getting in the way of my concentration. I have to pull out of here, come back around, probably from the other angles, and reset myself. When it most people that I really know from any stripe that were in this industry for a short period of time, like within the last 5 years or so, most drivers get into the commercial industry through signing up with corporate companies, and by corporate companies, I mean guys call them mega carriers, whatever you want to call them. That is referring to companies like Schneider, Werner, JB Hunt, Swift, Knight Transportation, which those companies also own USA Trucking, Abilene Motor Express, and a handful of subsidiaries. Most of these companies have a new driver program, but just like the case with the private schools, some of them can be what we call it in the college industry as diploma mills. They're CDL mills where they'll try to rush you through the training. They won't be thorough, they won't be observant, and kind of tailor and figure out what your capabilities are and where your issues lie. And some of them just do not give you enough time behind the wheel. When I was going to my community college training program, we were allowed on breaks and other stuff to actually go out and physically drive and use the test range with the commercial trucks with our free time and breaks to actually go out there and get our hands, on the equipment, practice parking and maneuvering. It's unfortunate though, like your fear and your awareness is very different when you're dealing with an educational situation versus a actual work situation, because when you're in an educational space, yes, it is safe, it is secure. Um, I'm Please don't pull this BS with me again. The thing I hate the most about this, right, is you're gonna get into the loading position here, and if it lets me, it will this time. But it'll turn my truck around. A lot of what will help your experience when you get out of school really is just the amount of time that you can freely get your hands on their equipment in a safe environment and just familiarize yourself. It's the hardest part of dealing with commercial trucks is the sensory overload that comes with operating them. You have a bunch of gauges, you have a lot more noise and sound because the trucks are not designed really, they are for some noise insulation, but not a lot. They are noisier, the way their bodies shift and move is different from cars. It's just, there's a lot to take in on first experience, and the hardest part and the scariest part of the job is overcoming that sensory overload. Primarily what most commercial schools do is they teach you parking maneuvers, backing maneuvers. For the most part, it's usually straight line backing, parallel parking, offset parking, where you have to pull from a kind of offset, just a separate angle that's away from where your space is, and figure out how to get the truck into that position. So there's and they pretty much universally cover that. Whenever you pass a CDL school in your local area, you're going to see a line of cones for those very specific parking maneuvers. But it's very hard to really cement that kind of stuff in. I was one of those people that kind of self-taught myself how to park. And it takes time, it takes a lot of frustration, it's embarrassing because you'll make mistakes. Hopefully you hope you won't hit somebody, but you will make mistakes. You will be sitting out there in the dark with very little light to see, having to constantly get out of your truck and look and be observant. And it's just, no matter how much you back on a actual, safety, like on a safety course, it will never fully convey the stress or the intensity of actual open road, being in a truck stop, being in those locations. So just be prepared that it's helpful, but you will learn more in your first days out behind the wheel of your own truck than you will in your entire time in training. But that exposure to the equipment and to the interfaces and learning to actually turn and move the truck is still valuable. But the everyday life experience stuff, trying to learn to anticipate traffic movements and other things, that doesn't come from, you get a little bit of experience with it in truck driving schools, but you're not going to get it until you're actually out there. And the intensity escalates really fast, and you, like, a lot of your early mistakes in the truck will be from lack of observation. You're not watching your corners enough. You might not have your mirrors in an optimal location. After being out for about 5 years on the road, I've got a very specific way that I set up my mirrors depending on what type of trailer I'm pulling in real life. If I'm pulling a standard box or dry van, my truck and the trailer are almost not visible in my mirrors. Like, you can tell that here, even in the game setup, it's roughly near where I put it, but that's my personal choice. But you basically want these mirrors to be covering every facet of the front end of the truck and the trailer that you can, and the space around you at the same time. Your convex mirrors and your nose mirrors are for context and peripheral vision. Your California mirrors or your large mirrors are for detail. They're what you're checking in to see how far behind that car behind your trailer is, and just other hazards that may be approaching you. That's what you use them for. The large mirrors are for detail. The small mirrors are for, kind of just getting a sense of what's around you, but you can't really focus too much with them, except for certain situations. There's also the added benefit of most of the trucks having those corner mirrors, especially on the hood, right at the periphery and the very far corners of the front end of the truck, so you can also use them to kind of sense depth around your unit as you're backing up and you're having to come up close to a wall or something, or just in general using them to know where the front end of your truck is. So they add visibility behind you, but they can also be useful as tools for moving around and operating your truck as well. I guess another thing is, if you end up going to a truck driving school through a corporate company, they will almost universally have it depends on what type of company it is, but from my experience with like Celadon Trucking, which by the way is now defunct, it's kind of similar to Schneider and Werner and other companies in the fact that you will be signing on for usually anywhere from 8 to 10 month contract with them. That's also, to put it in perspective, a normal CDL training program, a good one, will go anywhere from $7,000 to $8,000 up front. So when we're talking about that contract is covering the cost of what would be normal CDL training. Now, I cannot profess myself to have hands-on knowledge with how the trainers work in these corporate schools, but all of the stuff that I've said applies with CDL mills and other places. You might have an excellent, teaching and training staff at these schools. You might not. They might just try to rush you through it and get you out the door. When I came into these corporate companies, it was with a CDL already in hand from my community college, where I earned it, through basically doing a 16-week normal college course that had, in-class simulator, parking, and road driving. But out of those facets, the road driving was the smallest portion of what I did, because it's not cheap to insure trucks, to educate, student drivers, and do a lot of distance with them. That's like by virtue of even a really good school. It is not easy to insure for training purposes, and you still have to drive that vehicle out in the public. And it's a lot of the reason you don't get a lot of time on a road course is because of the insurance that your school has to pay. Another kind of important aspect about getting your first after you get out of training is kind of things that you should need. If you're going to do general OTR, depending on what you're comfortable with, you do want to have clothes for multiple different climates and temperature ranges, because you could go, like, especially if you came from the south, if you were coming up 95, like through the 95 corridor or something like that, you could go from being in Florida in the 80s or 90s to being in, like, northeast Georgia or South Carolina, and it being down in the 40s in the same day. I'm not saying you could make it that far, but that's just an example. Or the next day you could you could finish out wherever you were. If you were like in Savannah and then you ended up in like Ohio, you could go from temperature ranges in the 70s, 80s, and 90s to temperatures in the 30s and 40s. And in the case of if you went like into the Northwest, you could be going into the negatives. You could be going into negative 15, negative 25, negative 30. So clothing, like keeping that in your head that you really should have some comfortable clothes. If you're someone like me, have comfortable clothes that you're comfortable driving and sitting in. I'm one of those people that legitimately, when I was working OTR, would have my actual clothing for when I was out in the elements and clothing for when I was getting out, for being in the truck. And I would literally just close my curtain, go into my sleeper, change into the layers that I needed depending on how cold it was or if it was raining, and then, leave the truck and so on and so forth. And then once I was done loading or responsible for getting the load secure or anything like that, then I got back into my comfortable clothes. Now, with some driving jobs, that just isn't possible. If you're working local or you're working something like flatbed and you have to get out every, I think it's 150 or 250 miles for flatbeds because you have to check your load securement. But there are certain facets of the job where you will be getting out of the truck constantly, and if you're doing some form of regional local delivery, you'll probably be in a uniform or something like that anyways. So just have enough clothing. There were times where I was pretty much carrying about, I would say, about 30 days worth of laundry on me. I don't know why my nose is itchy. Sorry. It's very dry down here. But a lot of that gear adds weight. I mean, there were times that I had 1,000 pounds of clothing and tools and other stuff on my truck, which was stupid because it always made my my weights really close to max gross. Which max gross on common carrier and interstate loads is 80,000 pounds. That's why you see cat scales at almost every truck stop and things like that. That's one of your primary responsibilities if you're driving for a major carrier and you have mostly drop and hook or live loaded freight. You're gonna be stopping by a scale often, and it's a really good idea if your your fuel card or your company allows to get your card into like a cat scale app if you're gonna be around those type of truck stops. I mean, most truck stops have cat scales, but getting that app on, because having that app on your phone will allow you to basically put in the information it'll let you put your truck number in, your trailer number, depending on if it's hazardous material or not, what type of load is on it, or what type of materials are on it. It's just very quick, and the nice part about it is if it's in the system correctly, you can go up there, you can do your first weigh. It will actually get it out. I use that information from it. I don't close it out or go to reweigh yet. I leave that window up because it shows your steers, drives, and tandem weights. I have an actual calculator for that you can put in the hole spacing on the tandems and put in the precise weights. And I will take that, put the calculations in, and use that pretty much as a safeguard to really, I use it as a safeguard so that I don't have to do extra reweighs. Some people are like, well, if you have it, you already calculated it out and your hole placement and everything is correct for the load weight, why are you doing a reweigh? I'm like, because I physically have a piece of paper that says with authority, this is the weight that I found and meets. I did my initial assessment with the cat scale, adjusted it properly, and here's what the total weight and the individual axle weights are based on that calculation. And Basically, I've never had to really use it in a legal sense, but it's a very good thing to have in a lot of situations, because it's a legal offense to have the correct weights rendered on there. So if you have a situation where something's leaking or you have snow on your trailer in certain places and it pushes the weight above, what is legal, you have that defense saying, this is how it was when I brought it into the truck stop, that tank was filled up, so on and so forth. And they can't really argue with that. And if they want to argue with it, one, they're ignoring the fact that you did what you were supposed to. You properly scaled everything out. You got everything correct, and that they don't care. Like, there are enforcement and DOT personnel that genuinely just want to, meet their quota. Unfortunately, so scaling your truck with most corporate companies, they will give you some way to enter your fuel card into your into that CAT scale app, depending on if it's like EFS or ComData or ComData. People pronounce that differently. That's a godsend. That's a small thing that doesn't cost anything to you. I don't understand why some of these older guys are like, I don't use my personal phone for business calls. I'm like, why? Because if you're unless you're an owner operator and you're doing something like that, I could understand having an extra phone specifically for your professional contacts and for people to call during certain business hours, right? That I can understand. But if you're a corporate driver, the only people that are going to be calling you is your dispatcher, maybe your planner, or other personnel from your specific corporate company. So that's really kind of a dumb statement to make. I shouldn't have to use my personal phone for business call. I'm like, well, if you're an owner operator, that would make sense, because you're treating it like you're your own office. So you're going to turn off your public cell phone during business hours. I can completely 100% say that, but yeah, there's some guys that act really weird with those kind of things. For the life of me, I don't understand. Truck. What are you doing? Like, I'm sitting here holding the throttle down. It's like, nope. These signs really do not need to be here. Yep. And they're solid too, which doesn't make any sense. Yeah, off topic. You don't see stuff like that on actual public roads. You don't. Unless it's in a place where trucks aren't around, because we need the swing space. It's just another inaccuracy of the simulation. Yeah. There's other stuff that I'm trying to think of. There is another good app for commercial driving. It's called the Hammer app. It's basically using the Google Maps, I think the base API, and it's using a system to impose the restrictions. I don't know if I think they're using some of the same systems that actual truck GPS is used. It's a similar deal. Hey, what's up, dude? I'm losing my train of thought here. Where is it wanted? Oh, it's at the ass end of the property. All right. The Hammer app is very helpful because it's absolutely free. There isn't a subscription service with the Hammer app, and it is very reasonable. It's pretty accurate. It still has some of the same hiccups that truck GPSs do, where there will genuinely be no restrictions on a road, and it will tend to avoid it, even if there isn't any tight corners or weird maneuvering with it. There's a lot of things that will come down to your actual local knowledge in the future if you're in places often enough, and just in situations where you're familiar with that area. And you'll tend to, there are certain things you'll genuinely start to ignore with any types of the GPSs. If you go to a customer particularly often, you'll tend to ignore that kind of stuff. But for the most part, they are. Yeah, I really don't like doing super long hauls right now, because family, if I need to walk out of the room, and yeah, the routes for these are kind of boring. Like, there's more to see on the interstates than there is on county roads, and it just kind of I mean, I could do these, but that's like that's a 1,200 mile plus run that'll take me 2.5 hours to do in game. That's more reasonable. I might do this one. I gotta remember not to delete my trailer. Oh, I did me the courtesy of turning the truck around again. So, the Hammer app, I've gone over kind of small expectations from trucking companies and from private schools. It's one of those things like plumbers and other stuff. It's really good to try to find out as much information about whatever truck driving school you're interested in as possible, because because of how expensive it is, especially if you pay for it up front. That's 2 or 3 months wages for some people. If not, for normal people. I'm not talking for like professional truck drivers that are making $3,000 to $4,000 a month with experience. It's a steep cost, and you want to be very careful with who you choose to go with. So, if you can get information and research about them, do it. If you can talk to actual other drivers in your area that are local about them, ask them. I was lucky to have a really good driver training program at the Workforce Development Center at my local community college, but yeah, it can be bad. I think another aspect about it is that you really need to be, depending on who you are and what you're planning to do, you need to be carefully looking over the type of position you're going to take in. If you're signing up with most of the major carriers, they're expecting you to do OTR work, plain and simple. So I love fighting with the traffic AI with this, because I need to get in that turn, and the game will keep spawning people, and people are going to rush this pocket that I'm about to make to sweep this entry. If you are not ready for that level of isolation and many other things, be careful what you sign up for, because if you're with a major carrier, you are going to be out to start for multiple weeks at a time. And usually, you like when you're going into training at first, before you really have your license and you're in training, you could be out for 8 months straight, like a normal military deployment length of time, um, before you're home again. And even then, these companies expect you to be out for, multiple weeks. I don't know if this is going to play that same kind of crap with me. I don't like how this game is very finicky with the oversized. If this was, I feel like it should be a little bit less finicky and more forgiving for these trailers, and then more strict with things like drive-in and reefer because of the nature of what they are. It's just, you should be. It's much easier to articulate and move those kinds of equipment. So, um, trying to think here. On top of your clothing and having like multi kind of weather situations, um, if you're working OTR, it is good. A good things to have would be rubber mallets for random stuff, hitting release pins on trailer tandems, like a 10 or 15 pound sledgehammer for breaking away wood blocks, like a decent 4 foot crowbar or pry bar. I don't know if they have specific names for them. And if you're really often doing a lot of high value stuff, um, and high security loads, you're going to be cutting a lot of those 1/4 inch thick bolt seals. So it's worth your time, to also get your hands on a good pair of bolt cutters for those seals. It's also, if you're a forgetful person and you lose your key to your locks, it's a really easy way to remove your lock from a corporate trailer. Um, let's see here. Do we have the right of way? We did, but you're gonna take it away from me, aren't you? These trailers always catch on these gates without fail. Again, that goes back to what I said about the entry and exit ways being way too frickin' small. So, sledge, mallet, pry bar, bolt cutters if you feel up to it, because you'll find a lot of times that either receivers won't have them, or the ones they have are used by everybody and really worn out. So those are helpful. Um, you A lot of companies that are trying to tell you to get off the road, owner operators get off the road. You should still learn how to chain up. You should still learn how to chain up trucks. A big thing to note and realize about them, especially because you're depending on where you are, what state you're in, the chain laws will be different about what has to be done. The only places that I really had to ever chain up was in like Central Washington State, but the biggest thing to remember first is you want to get the chains laid out, kind of figure out where they are, and you want to throw them over the top. Like, you want to put the center of it over the top of the circumference of the tire and then wrap it down. And then some guys will use like fifth wheel pullers or some kind of other type of hook tool to grab one side so you can get it nice and tight. And there's this kind of C-clamp, and there's just hooks there as well on the actual chain. I don't know what to call it. There's like there's a latch there that the entire set of chains rotates around, but you really want to get that. You roll that over the top of the tire. You cinch those connecting chains together with those hooks as far as you can and twist them or get them bound around themselves as tight as you can, because especially with the drives, the whatever slack you give, one, it could compromise the link and it could like release the hook and fling off, but any of the excess, if you're chaining up, will end up smacking against your airbags and your frame and part of your braking, part of your braking system, like your airlines and stuff. So it's really important as you tighten that stuff around to make sure that there isn't excess slack. Especially it's a little bit more forgiving on the outside drive tire, but definitely on the inside of your drives. Now, it's also important. I might use my unit for this, but like on depending on the manufacturer, but most manufacturers here, the primary drive is always going to be like the backmost right hand side, and then when your locking diff is set, the opposite side up in front of it. Usually, I'm talking in a situation with 2 axles. This has 3 axles on it, so I haven't had a chance to actually look over a multi-axle tractor like this where it is out of the standard configuration, but usually it is the passenger side rearmost set of tires is powered, and when the locking differential is on the front driver's side, so you have these offset on both sides. In the case of the situation that I'm talking about in Washington State, you are chaining both of those live sets of drive tires, and you will be running with lock diffs usually when you're in those conditions, because lock diffs can be used below 35 miles an hour, and you do not want to run them extensively because the forward diff is really not built to handle the same amount of abuse and heat for as long as the main primary differential is, the back one. And they're planetary, so the main drive actually goes right through the middle of the secondary on that split differential. So, big note, don't try to run split differential over 35 miles an hour. It will burn up very quickly. And so just be careful with that. In most states, as well that I understand, you need to chain an offset pattern with your trailer just to help with traction for it. Some states do not require you at all to chain your trailer. So that's really, if you're ever in a situation like that, you should ask an actual patrol officer or someone with the DOT. But usually in the places that you're forced to chain up, there is going to be an officer on site. There's going to be someone around there watching the situation and actively ticketing you if you don't obey the chain law. So, also keep that in mind. You may think you're quick and clever, but at least where I've been in parts of Montana and Washington State and Colorado, F around and find out. You will get ticketed if you attempt to drive in situations where you are blatantly told to chain up and you don't. So, there's that. Along with kind of talking about this chaining situation, a very important thing to understand about most infrastructure and how most states respond to snow and ice. It's interstates, primary roads, main roads, and highways first. So if you've just came in from out of state, say you were coming out of Ohio going into PA, and there's a major snowstorm going on, and 76 is getting snowed on and sleeted on. If it has just started recently, if you try to get off the interstate up there, especially on the turnpike, there's a very high chance that the off-ramps have not been plowed or salted. And this has happened often. There have been situations, thankfully I didn't go off, where I tried to get off at a rest area or an actual legitimate exit to go to a receiver, and there was black ice on that off-ramp, and my trailer almost went off the ramp and almost took my tractor with it. So if you're going into a snowy area, be aware that if it's the start of a winter storm and they haven't been out pre-treating anything, the on and off ramps and rest areas or stuff off of the main roadway are going to be some of the most dangerous areas you're going to be in those kind of conditions. Now, if the states are very proactive with their pre-treatment and they are aware of winter storms, that may not be a problem, but it will be in private areas. Like if you have a private industrial park, they do not come in for free and plow that stuff. They take care of their own infrastructure. So the county is going to really only respond where they need to and nothing more. And those guys are only working on weird emergency times during the year. They don't operate year round, especially where I live. So that's another one. Regionally, the Northeast really, if you are not expecting to hit traffic, that's your own fault. It is really handy to keep your main truck GPS going and keep Google Maps up and constantly look for traffic alerts and be aware of the time of day and conditions, because if you're working around places like, New Jersey and New York and, like big metro areas like Philadelphia and Trenton and New York City, the weather will affect it, the time of day will affect it. All of this stuff can be easily dealt with if you understand that going in. And there's also situations like if you're trying to go from Maryland up into Massachusetts or Connecticut, if it's rush hour, you are better off taking a beltway and avoiding New York City altogether than actually going the shortest possible route, because one, it's taking the beltway will be far less stressful because there'll be less traffic. You might have to merge over and change lanes a little bit, but that's nothing compared to going across the George Washington Bridge and then having to fight your way to 87 and then fight your way back to 95, and you are muscling through some of the most gridlocked parts of the southern Manhattan and the northern part of the boroughs, when you could have added 26 minutes onto your route. So it's really good to know alternatives. And sometimes we get psyched out as new drivers, by the shortest distance, and it becomes kind of a fallacy, because there are times that you may be able to add 10 minutes onto your travel time that avoided 40 minutes of delays or more, or 2 hours of delays or more. So it's important to really actually look. I have never actually used a road atlas. A lot of the older drivers swear by them, and you're not doing it right if you're not using a road atlas. I'm like, I go on local DOT locations and other stuff and pay attention to damn signs. There's so many bad stereotypes about new drivers that a lot of it doesn't really apply in reality, and they're actually talking about foreigners that can't even read English, or they don't want to read, non-metric measurements. There's just things that get on my nerves that are toxic about this job. So that's one thing. I feel like I failed to mention earlier, you do want money set aside if you're going to leave a company to cover your living expenses, your rentals, your hotel rooms if you leave a company. A lot of corporate companies are going to really lowball you as far as your cents per mile. If you end up working for a cents per mile, like over the road company, unfortunately, they'll try to start you up at like 26 to 28 cents per mile. And when you break down your calculations, and if you're in a governor truck at 65 miles an hour, not only are you limited in your daily mileage, just do the calculations, do 0.26 times the mileage, and then break out the percentage for your medical insurance with that company, and then you have your answer. So I'm trying to think, if you're running my speeds right now, like where I was running, let's say like 580 miles times, let's see, 0.26. Yeah, that's $150 for about an average regional run, and then let's see, break that down times 4, like 4. That's like, well, if you, let's say you work 7 days, you're making about $1,000. This again, this is without taking out your insurance, where it's like most decent insurance is going to take about like anywhere from $170 to $250 per pay period out. So in reality, you're making like $800. Then you multiply that by 4 weeks in a month, and you start getting the picture. Like let's do that. Yeah, so $4,200 per month, but then when you break the insurance down, that's about $1,000 a month. So you're actually looking at $3,200. Now, if you're in that low range, you will absolutely have to be running high mileage the entire time to be able to really get anywhere with it. Which for some people that's great, but some people cannot handle driving 7 days a week without a break or a 34, and there are other drivers that will, and they'll space out the amount of hours they'll drive. It's getting out of kind of sync here, but you can easily make $5 to $6 grand a month if the CPM is reasonable, like 46, 48, 50 cents a mile, and they give you good runs. That's another thing that's kind of scummy that I should bring up with alrighty. Another kind of scummy thing about corporate companies is they will start you out with some really nice loads. They'll send you to California, they'll send you to, Oregon and places like that from the East Coast, and you'll get 4, 5, 6 months into it, you'll make some really nice money, and then once the honeymoon period ends, they are going to lock you into these really tight, really short little regional runs, like 480, 500 miles a day or less, and they will keep you doing repetitive stuff, non-dedicated, by the way, not for a specific customer or anything like that, just the same things without any benefits, just over and over again with limited miles. So they'll get you in a financial hole if you get too used to what you were paid initially. So that's another kind of shady thing that corporate companies can pull with you. You'll have this honeymoon period where you'll be getting lots of really great loads and mileage for several months at the beginning of your driving experience, like right after you get out of school, and then they'll just utterly drop you, and you'll get these weird live loads in weird places, kind of out of sequence. Hey, how's it going, Ben? Oh, I had mistyped that. Oh no, I'm an ignorant trucker. I feel like everything's out of order. Like, I really feel like I would have to put a clipboard here with like bullet points with this kind of information, because I'm not staying on topic enough. That's a very concerning thing to start with. If you can ideally get it, if you're up for OTR stuff, look for percentages of loads, because even then, if the load cost is, $8,000 to $12,000, what's 20% or 25% of that load? It's not bad. And then there's going to be loads like stuff that I pull that's 18 or 20 grand, and it's total load cost and fees, and you're getting a percentage of that. The dog's barking upstairs. Those jobs can be really great because you'll be back and forth. Some of the percentages of those loads won't be amazing, but it will be substantially more. And then again, the same thing kind of applies to very high CPM. If you're getting paid 75 cents per mile or something like that, or even $1 or more per mile, then we're talking a different language. Then you can actually work less days and work less and have more flexibility in that case. But be aware of that. But if you're training with a corp company, your CPM is going to be low when you're in training. It's going to be low after you leave training, and they're going to lure you into a false sense of security by giving you these really great loads to start off after you've gotten out of training, so you stay. But then I haven't been inside of these companies and been at their board meetings, but I am very sure that with every driver, there is a set time in a matter of months or how long they've been with the company, whatever, that the cutoff for those golden loads or the high mileage load goes. Now, some of these corporate companies will even go so far as to give you brand new trucks to kind of, butter you up and sweeten the deal, which again is kind of dirty. So there's that as well. So it's something to think about, something to be careful with. Excuse me. I need to do my brake adjustments. So that's there. Kind of unrelated. Kind of when I was talking about medical insurance, you want to avoid HSAs, health savings accounts, for the fact that there isn't any, it really is just what's in the HSA. There is nothing more comprehensive. There's not discounts on other things. What is in your health savings account is what you have to pay. Some of them will have discounts on stuff, but it is nowhere near as comprehensive as, say, like a high level PPO that's like taking $1,000 a month, but it guarantees an incredibly high level of coverage for you or your family. HSAs can be a death trap for most people, and they try to sell them and pawn them off on a lot of normal people and truck drivers. And they can paddle you up shit creek, because if the incident happens that is $8,000 and your health savings account only goes up to $4,000 or $5,000, you got to make up the difference. Whereas if you had a more comprehensive, specialized account like one of those PPOs, that $8,000 is covered because you're paying more up front in your daily, well, not daily, but your monthly insurance and weekly insurance costs. And so that's getting deducted for your account for much more thorough coverage in many cases. There's other stuff there that can be helpful, but that's one I just want to point out, because I had situations in my own life with health savings accounts that had me $8,000 or $9,000 in debt for a single emergency room visit. Not even with, okay, I had an incident that happened in with a complex migraine in Baltimore. It cost $800 to get the ambulance to come out to me at a private truck stop there in Baltimore, Maryland. That was $850 on insurance. On a health savings account, a single walk-in to an emergency room costed $8,500 for me to walk in to an in-market hospital emergency room. $8,500 to just be seen in an emergency room, because I had at the time had contracted Hep A from contaminated groundwater at a specific place on one of my routes that I'd gotten, water from to put on my truck. So besides the point. But a PPO would have covered all of that in that situation. A good one. Like even the one that I was on for most of the time that I was working would have covered all of those expenses without question in market, But because of the type of account that I had and the type of insurance that I chose to have, that's what happened. So try to learn about, don't let an HR person or anybody talk you into HSA accounts or anything like that unless you're absolutely sure the coverage is comprehensive enough to take care of any emergency like that. If you're working for a trucking company and they have some type of, high upfront PPO, you're probably safer biting the bullet in that regard, because if you get into any kind of accident or life-threatening thing, the PPO will cover your ass. So that's just something to keep in mind when it comes to dealing with HR and other personnel. Don't get yourself stuck in too deep into a situation where you can end up having to file for personal bankruptcy or something like that, because it is easy to happen in situations like that. I guess, where could I go from there? I think another topic I could talk about is DOT enforcement, types of inspections, road restrictions. Depending on where you are and what time of the year it is, a lot of DOT inspections are just level 1s. They're going to check to look at your tire wear, they're going to make sure all your lights and signals are working, and basically just they'll check your license information, your insurance, and send you on about your way. Level 2, it's kind of more of the same. Depending on the department, it will involve checking other facets of the in-cab things. Do you have certain stuff on board? Do you have a fire extinguisher? So on and so forth. Level 3s, the inspector will sometimes have you go over actual pits so they can look at the underbody. They will look for leaks. They will look for tire wear. They will look for brake pad and liner, depth on drum brakes. They will inspect that on the trailer. They will inspect all of your lights. They will check your insurance. Most of these guys are pretty relaxed and chill. They tend to not be super aggressive. They're pretty respectful. For the most part, state patrolmen are as well. It really doesn't do you any good, no matter what the circumstances are, to be inflammatory with them, because they could, if you hit them the wrong way, they could write you up for stuff, and there's no way you can contest it. So I tend to just work with them as best as I can. As far as enforcement, don't let older drivers psych you out of this. A lot of state patrol enforcement is criminally understaffed. A lot of states, I don't want to get too specific, but a lot of states barely have any enforcement in them at all during the time of day. That usually the smaller states, the smaller they are, especially up in the Northeast, the heavier the enforcement is going to be, because they have less ground to cover. But if you're dealing with Texas and you're dealing with, the central and western states, even places like California, they do not have enough state patrolmen to cover the hundreds, sometimes thousands of linear miles of interstates, local and rural highways, and county roads to be looking out for you. So don't let these older drivers make you feel paranoid about the popo, because they are not as omnipresent as you'd like to believe. But don't also make that don't try to take that as a suggestion to drive like an absolute dick and be dangerous. But one, dealing with law enforcement is not as much of a pain in the ass as you like to think. So if your company, if your operations management are shitheads, they'll get on you for DOT inspections. But and other stuff. But if they're bad at hiring and they've hired a lot of crappy drivers and their CSA score is bad, that is not your fault as a driver when you get pulled over. Like no receiver, no operations manager, dispatcher is within their rights to be bad mouthing you or talking crap about being late because of a DOT inspection or something like that. If you didn't do anything wrong, you passed it, nobody should be allowed to give you any crap for that kind of thing, because it's not in your control. Just like accidents aren't in your control. Fatigue is another thing that goes along with that. Do not ever let operations staff, dispatchers, whoever tell you to drive when you're not comfortable. It's bad enough in cars, it's really bad in trucks, because you have a lot more responsibility and things you have to look out for. So just do not let anybody push you to do anything that you're not comfortable with. It is commonly, a side note, as far as safety goes, truck stops, especially corporate ones, are really the safest place to be if you feel like you're being followed or somebody's harassing you on the road, because there's cameras everywhere. They're usually well lit around the fuel islands. So if you're in a personal vehicle and you are tired and you need to rest, pull into a truck stop, because at least there's going to be cameras on every corner of the main building. There's going to be cameras in literally every lane of the fuel island for the trucks, and every lane for the gas station section, So they're a safe place to go. Rest areas can be isolated out in the middle of nowhere. There can be people hiding in the brush, in the woods, all kinds of stuff. So if you're ever in a situation where you don't feel safe, your best bet is to either go to a big chain truck stop. A lot of them, you can park in awkward places, and you really shouldn't. But if you tell them that you're absolutely exhausted, you can't run anymore, like, where is a safe place that I can pull up my truck to? Or even then, like, being on the shoulder near a corporate truck stop is still safer than being in a rest area. As much as they want to hype it, rest areas are less safe for people than truck stops are. And especially if you are a female driver, like, a lot of these big corporate truck stops will be your savior. But then it comes with added caveats, and I feel bad about that. You do want to protect yourself. Unfortunately, for most of us, a lot of the corporate companies will not allow you to carry a concealed firearm. And there's a lot of states that are real prosecutory about firearms as well. But it's always good to be aware of your surroundings. I walk between trucks because honestly I'm 6'2". I weigh over 200 pounds. You are if you're most people, you're not going to be able to catch me if I run, and most people are not as big as me, so that will go well. But if you're worried about your safety, walk out in the main areas of the actual truck stop, like out in the open. Don't walk between trucks unless there's light there and you can see around, because someone could hide on a catwalk and jump out at you. And a lot of times, like, those crimes aren't committed by other truck drivers. It's people lurking around truck stops doing that, but they lurk around rest areas, so it's like you can't get away from it. But honestly, it isn't that common. Well, and it's just like if you're in weird places, like you're in like Gary, Indiana, or somewhere like that, places that are very high crime already, like the places around Chicago, you're gonna need to be self-aware that there's always a likelihood of something going to happen in those specific areas. But for the most part, if you're out in Nevada, Arizona, Colorado, Texas, Oklahoma, Utah, like, just, you're not going to see much action as far as crazy stuff going on. I mean, most of the crackheads and meth heads are in on the East Coast or near the Eastern Seaboard, West Virginia, Ohio, PA, Maryland, parts of upstate New York. It's just, yeah. But that's an important thing. It's always handy to have a knife. It's also very handy to, like, don't be embarrassed if you need to run. If you feel unsafe, run for that truck stop. Run for the interior. Run for those cameras. Because people are not going to follow you into a highly, policed, watched, or videoed area like that. Unless they're really stupid. In which case, the likelihood of them getting anywhere is not very high. So that's something important to think about. A lot of women that I know that work in the industry will get off the road at certain times. Like, they'll get off earlier. Like, they'll work really early morning. And, like, we're talking, like, maybe 3, 4 a.m. to the mid-afternoon, like 4 o'clock. So they can get into the truck stop, get into a parking space that's got better lighting around it, better sight lines, closer to the actual main truck stop. They'll always have their phone on them. They'll have pepper spray and other deterrents, things like that. So that's something to think about for your personal safety. I'm not going to lie, some of us illegally still carry firearms on our trucks because my life is more important than my company's their policy. Oh, sorry. I really shouldn't do that because the music starts on that. I need to finish up this tea so I stop pausing it. Your safety is important. Actually, eating and drinking enough is important. A good thing of note besides that, food-wise and coffee-wise, is if you drink coffee and eat food at a certain time of the day, you're going to need to go to the bathroom predictably pretty much at the same time every day, as long as you're drinking coffee and eating at the same time. So you can kind of almost plan out your stops for the day, especially if you're doing long distance, and you can time that to get out and stretch, walk around, So that's a good thing to go by. Like, I would generally start my day, have breakfast, and stop to use the bathroom after 2.5 hours or so, and then I wouldn't really need to again for another 4 or 6 hours after that. So if you have just-in-time loads and stuff like that, you need to keep that in mind, that your body is not going to play nice just because you're running expedited or running behind. So it's a good idea to look after yourself and be aware of things like that, because truck, why don't you just get in the other lane instead of slowing down on the interstate? Oh, these bots always mess with me. So that's another thing. Bathroom breaks. How your body's working. I kind of just get into that regimen of drinking coffee like shortly after I wake up, so that pee breaks and bathroom breaks are pretty much at the same time in the shift. Trying to also think as well. Sleep is weird for me because I have sleep issues, so I have to take medications for it. But for the most part, that's another reason why you're safer in a corporate truck stop, because they just tend to be quieter overall. Except for when people are honking on the fuel island. That's a different story. It just tends to be safer there and quieter there. What else? I think another kind of slightly off-topic thing is savings and percentages. It's a really good idea to start out, no matter what you do. Like even if you need to get a percentage calculator when you're first starting in the industry, and just put 10% away of everything, of every paycheck in there, no matter what. I tend to do that before taxes. Like I'll look at the before taxes and insurance, so I make it uniform regardless. Some people will take that money and invest it. Others will just put it in savings, but having a separate savings with 10% in it can be a godsend working this job, especially for emergencies, or if a company doesn't work out for you or you're not comfortable with them. It can give you a lot more flexibility. And then it can factor into health issues and other things like that. Kind of going back to what I was talking about, regional, and talking about what your expectations are. OTR work can be very isolating. A lot of us aren't on our radios anymore. Mostly, like new drivers like me aren't on our CBs because of how much crap talking goes on, and not just normal conversations. There's a lot of pointlessly non-constructive conversations going on, like just talking crap about your truck, and calling you ignorant, calling you stupid. There's a lot of angry drivers out there that just want to take out their daily problems on you. And that's a big reason why a lot of people don't have their radios on anymore. I keep mine on, but with the volume off almost all the time, because I work in areas with extreme traffic, blind corners, snow, heavy rain, so it's on, and when I get into those conditions, I tend to turn the volume back on, so I have like prior warning. But it's kind of just important to note that that's a reality. Sometimes you're getting nice people on, you got people relaxing, chilling out, and just having a conversation, asking you questions about things. Sometimes it can be a really lovely experience, but most of my experience with CB radios is just a whole bunch of ignorant political speaking, just shit talking, disrespectfulness, toxicity. It's just, yeah. It's like almost every other driver is like the worst kind of Reddit moderator or shit poster. Like not the good kind of shit poster, just you know what I'm talking about. Well, I'm having a brain fart right now. It's probably because I haven't eaten yet today. It's my own fault. That's a big thing. I'm really planning to at least do some conversational videos about specific truck manufacturers and issues. Like I'll probably try to talk to people on forums and ask them what unique little quirky things break on their truck that are not related to like direct drive line. Like I know I have a lot of very specific Volvo and Freightliner specific quirky breakdowns with the coolant system and diesel particulate filters that are mechanical failures, not electronic or sensor failures. So I'd like to do something like that. I don't like the kind of conversations that go on a lot on the road, because a lot of these guys are really too brand loyal and they're really disrespectful about it too. It's really what works for you and just understanding your equipment. Not all new trucks are crap. A lot of times it comes down to how they're maintained and how they're cared for. So don't take any of these guys' words as doctrine. There's a lot of people that have done good reviews, thorough reviews of the equipment. There's a lot of information on a lot of the truck repair boards that talk about unique, specific. Is that bus gonna die for it? You made me paranoid. There's a lot of resources you can find that are helpful about specific trucks that you drive, and it's also important to note that some trucks have first-party manufacturer engines, others will have third parties. Like for instance, you'll have Freightliners running Cummins. You'll have Internationals running Cummins. You'll have Peterbilt's running Cummins. You'll have companies that will have a body and frame, and then a drivetrain and an engine that doesn't come from them. And then there are like PACCAR actually does produce their own engines. They have like co-op transmissions that they've done with help from Eaton Fuller. There's all kinds of different variations on these trucks, and there's all these different specialties and all this different stuff. So I just suffice it to say, if you're buying your own truck, do your research, find what you like, how it looks, its comfort levels. It is just a rule of thumb to point out here. The old style Peterbilts, 379s, 378s, W9 Kenworths, they're small, they're cramped, they have poor visibility, small mirrors, long hoods, like occluded sight lines. They may look nice, but their visibility is bad. Just don't let people it looks pretty on the outside. I'm like, yeah, but I can barely see out of the thing. And if you're someone like me that's over 6 foot, yeah, a Peterbilt as 379 or a Kenworth, W900 is not gonna be comfy for me, because the door is gonna be right there. If I don't have armrests on that side of the seat and it's a corporate truck, it's like you're screwed. So just keep that in mind as well. I think the other thing I glossed over and forgot about earlier, it is really useful if you're a corporate driver to get your hands on as many loyalty cards for major chain truck stops and small chain truck stops as you can, because if you have open fueling per se, or even with corporate companies, if you can fuel at like say Love's, TA, and Pilot, those showers and those points can be really helpful. Because let's face it, truck stops charge anywhere from $15 to $17 per shower. If you get the points topped out, you can easily make 4 cents per gallon, and that can turn into several dollars and other bonuses and stuff that you can get in there, and you can buy entire meals. There were times when I was working consistently OTR where I could buy my entire breakfast, coffee, and some snacks there with just the points I was making from my corporate fueling of my corporate unit. So really useful to get those membership cards or those loyalty cards for those truck stops. So if you get the chance, if you're out and about and you have one nearby and you're going out and you're starting to drive, grab a couple of them, because they will become useful. Another important thing to note, it's kind of financially related but not related to the loyalty systems. Almost every truck stop you will find out on the road, and whether it's mom and pop or corporate, is going to be 20 to 40% more written up, and for really, really in-demand items like laundry detergent, shampoo, and other stuff that you would normally go to a grocery store and get, can be marked up as much as 200%. So don't cry and moan about it. Like, that's the expectation. If you go to these places, they are going to mark up a lot of the products by at a minimum of 20% for most items, and as high as 200% for in-demand items. So be aware of that. Complaining about it is like, I see so many people that aren't truck drivers complain about it. If you are becoming one, just be aware of it. They do it because they know this is, for some of us, this is the only place that there's enough room for us to stop and shop, or we have the time to, or where it's safe. It could be any number of things. Just be aware of that. That's why you see so many drivers making their own food in crock pots and doing stuff on the truck, because if you have a decent cooler or like a small mini fridge freezer, you can pack I have a mini fridge freezer that I have that's great, that you can pack in some chicken, some other stuff in there, and you can live for weeks off of what you got in your freezer for the amount that you'd spend in a single day at a truck stop on the same kind of stuff. So that's also a useful thing. Crock pots, the electric griddle, the crock pots are better. The electric griddles, coffee makers, and other stuff, depending on the truck and how kind of wimpy your inverter or your system is, can trip stuff on the truck. A lot of coffee makers have a lot of draw, even when the truck is running, and if you have an inverter, it can trip the breaker on the inverter with those kind of things. But microwaves don't tend to. But a lot of trucks will have safety breakers to keep the minimum voltage on the actual main battery bank at a safe level to actually turn the truck over on and off. So be aware of that. Exercise and motivating for exercise is probably one of the single hardest things to do in commercial truck driving. If you didn't already have the habit before you were in the trucking industry, it's going to be even worse because the job forces you to be sedentary all the time. A lot of the food that's at these truck stops, there's not a lot there. There tends to be more fruit than there does vegetables. They have things like hard-boiled eggs and things like that, but there's a lot of limits on healthy, one, it's not cheap. Two, it's just limited in general. So keeping healthy eating habits is very difficult on the road. So if you're already having trouble with it now, you'll have it in the future too. I am no exception. I ate a lot of crap while I was driving, and I still do. I'm still just forcing myself down to the point where I'm just eating, toast or something like that instead of eating, chips or something like that as a snack. Or just skipping entire meals during the day. That also factors into hydration. If you're getting dehydrated and you're not hydrating enough, you're going to have trouble sleeping on the road. It's going to also it's going to give you head fog and other issues. So as much of a pain in the ass it is to stop constantly to use the bathroom, it is very important that you stay hydrated. And that's why sometimes it's useful to do things like add drink mixes or add a little bit of salt to your water to help with water retention, things like that. Dehydration can do a lot to mess with your awareness. A lot that a lot of people don't give it credit for. So that's a good thing to think about. As far as oversize and specialist types of jobs, all of them have unique training because there's unique equipment involved. Some logging companies will actually have truck mounted cranes that you can actually manipulate and operate yourself that will have their own separate training. You'll have things like tanker jobs and hazardous material that, depending on if it's bulk or normal contract carrier and LTL, they'll have they'll have training on the tanker type, if it's a gravity fed versus pumped, what type of pumps they use, whether they run off the truck or independently. There's stuff like that for each unique kind of facet of the trucking industry. It's also important to know that dump trucks and cement trucks and other stuff are technically still part of the trucking industry, and don't write them off as options because your CDL-A can do a lot more than just drive over the road. So be looking for that stuff. And if you're starting out and you have a good record, you're in the positive, you don't have stuff on your moving violation record or your driving history, the sky's the limit. And honestly, a lot of the certifications and endorsements are very easy to obtain. There's a lot of good courses online that are free and videos that, go over the subject matter of those unique things. I recently got my tanker and hazmat endorsements. The important thing to understand, though, is the testing for this, for those endorsements, just gets you through the door. It's not comprehensive. It's not going to teach you how to load and unload a tanker trailer or a specific type of equipment. It's just going to explain to you the legal expectations if you're operating that type of vehicle, what the law expects you to do, like especially with hazmat, or understanding how to hook up and disconnect from using pups and pintle hooks and dollies and that kind of stuff. So training for the endorsements is done by the individual carrier or company. Um, Whereas the endorsements, there's just kind of an outline by the FMCSA and the Department of Transit as to what you're supposed to do with those specific, with those specific pieces of equipment and trailers and load types. But it is not comprehensive by any stretch. So be aware of that. But again, it is very easy to test for the endorsements. Having all of them is super useful. It's a little bit, some of them are a little bit wonky. I still plan to get my passenger endorsement as well, but they are not that hard to test for. You can easily sit there over time. Like, you could even do that in the back, just have a video playing in the background with the test questions and stuff going on, try to find something that's up to date. But a lot of it doesn't change year to year, and it can give you tremendous access to a lot of jobs you wouldn't otherwise think of. That locally, you might find something locally that plays amazing compared to what an OTR job would. Like, we're talking $26, $30 an hour kind of stuff for 4 or 5 days of work a week, and you can go home and you're making as much as a guy that's having to drive 5,000 or 5,500, 6,000 miles a week, to make the same difference. So don't ever hesitate to get your hands on that. And a lot of those endorsements, even hazardous material, unless you're an LTL carrier, you're usually hauling full truckloads of this stuff, and the most you'll have to really look over is your segregation chart and specific statutes. Now, the thing about hazardous material, and specifically hazardous material and tankers, is that you will be prohibited to from driving on certain bridges and through certain tunnels because of the explosive nature of the contents of your stuff. There's also certain marine pollutants and other pollutants that must follow regulations and can't go into certain residential areas around waterways or anything like that. You will be outright prohibited. You will get heavily ticketed, and your company will get cited if you ignore those regulations for those specific types of loads and products. So thank God, for the first time it's an actual green bypass. Oh God, I just realized all those cars are stopping on the scale ramp and wanting to get back into traffic. Oof. Oh. So yeah, if you can get if you can take the time to research and get your endorsements, get them, because they will open up so many more financial opportunities and flexibility for you and give you access to just hours of service that's easier for you, equipment that's nicer, or just overall just easier work for those endorsements. So go out and get them. A lot of them don't change from state to state. There's pretty decent comprehensive videos out there, even on YouTube here, that cover that kind of information. So check them out if you can. I'm also planning to link some stuff after I finish this stream that's just helpful information that I'll put in the description afterward that relates to endorsements. I might also put in some, if I actually like the candor of the drivers, like there's some good channels out there that cover stuff relating to just starting out driving. I think on the side of talking about hazardous materials, a good thing to do is, like, if you ever get citations or tickets for anything, if you have a Google Drive or somewhere else, back them up. Get an application like Tiny Scanner or something like that, and use your phone to scan those tickets, citations, and other stuff in. Keep them on you so that companies can't ignore you. Like, if they call you on something, having that citation there and saying, I paid for this, this is what I discussed, this is what's going on, and giving finer detail will remove a lot of the wiggle room for HR personnel and other people to really contest it, unless it's all based on insurance, in which case they'll just get, like, a lot of insurance companies will just give you the middle finger for anything. It doesn't matter if you have a good standing on your license, you have safety points, or anything else. They're just like, we don't want to give you this job because You had an incident that you weren't at fault for, but it's on here anyway, so you're screwed. I'm gonna take a look at my turns real quick. Let's just check the map out. Okay, so we're just getting outside of yeah, Utah. We're near the border. Yeah, I'm gonna get off after this, just because these are usually 2 hour almost plus runs, and this is still this game. When you're running nonstop like this, and you don't take rest breaks like the fatigue system wants you to, it will wear you out just like the real thing will. So, yeah. I don't know if I'll put music on or not. Yeah, this is a big thing. It's finding a good source of entertainment that you can put up with for a long time. A lot of us are streaming music or audiobooks pretty much constantly, because you'll get to a point very early on, like you'll be okay with just listening to music and enjoying the scenery, but enough travels down the same interstates and it all becomes visual white noise. You'll be so used to your environment that nothing is interesting anymore. And unfortunately, you spend enough time going back and forth down I-40 and I-10, the really beautiful vistas and plateaus and canyons on those, and even up in places like I-90 or I-70 will get old after a while. So entertainment's another thing there. Keeping yourself occupied, keeping yourself happy, taking care of your personal health. It's tricky. How's it going? I don't know if you're still on here or not. It doesn't show me the viewer counts on anything right now. I don't know if that's just because how the system's going or not. A lot of your interstate driving is relatively safe at the East Coast, and that's 12% grades. I did that with beer, so yeah. Yeah, running Columbus to Mount Crawford. Columbus, Ohio to Mount Crawford, Virginia, which is kind of northwest Virginia. Oh, that's a fun one. Western Virginia versus West Virginia. Yeah, that's a fun play on words. Yes. Oh, another thing is safety departments. Now, a lot of what corporate companies monitor as far as safety departments go is really their bread and butter is hard braking incidents. For companies without cameras, they're going to have a set acceptable amount per month that you can violate, that you can do per month. What's going on? I'm not sure. I mean, if you want me to take a look really quick, I can pause and check and see if there is. I don't know if there's crossplay, though. I'm not stopping fully, game. I'm just going to take a look here real quick. Let me see. I don't know. I think ATS may be a PC exclusive thing, not because of not like major label stuff, just because of where it was built on. Let's see. I think it does. It's not specifying what operating like. It is not. It's not specifying specifically which Xbox, whether it's Xbox Series X, the old traditional stuff. Um, it can be fun. A lot of guys goof around way more. I'm just over here on the Microsoft Store page. It is on Xbox, but I would go ahead and look for it on the store. I don't know what specific platforms it's on. Oh, here we have it. Says playable on PC, mobile. For some reason, I'm pretty sure that's with some tertiary system. Xbox One and Xbox Series S, X and S. It also has some crazy integrations. Something that's a different thing. Let's see. Is there any more information on it? That's a completely. Sorry, ignore that. That was completely unrelated. Some of these are not the same thing. I'm pretty sure the main ATS platform is available on Xbox, but I'm pretty sure it's not the same as the SCS. So let's see. I'm just checking the SCS website to see if there's any better information about that for you. Let me see. DLCs, blah, 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 blah. I'm not getting clear information. I'm fairly certain that ATS itself specifically, the one that I'm playing right now, is PC only, because I don't know how old's the platform. ATS is very old, game-wise. Let me see how the store page. I want to look at the release date because I haven't checked it in forever. Yeah, released in 2016, but I have a feeling the company had released prior games in that name before this. So SES has had previous games that were under the American Truck Simulator name in the past. So there might have been actual installments that were on consoles, but from what I understand, this specific version that I have here on Steam is just a PC exclusive because of the overhead. Like, yeah. Sorry, went off on a tangent there. Do I need to get fuel? I don't know. I'm at half a tank now, and we're only... Why did you just... It does this sometimes. It's kind of... It's a glitch that happens from time to time. If you stop and you look like you're going to take a break, the driver UI disappears. Oh. Diaper? Okay. Give me a second. We have a mess. Yeah, I'll be right back. Shouldn't take me too long. I guess I can set my brakes and stuff for a minute. I'll be right back. Sorry. Yeah, sorry about that. Had to go check on the baby and make sure that stuff was okay. Ooh. Alright. Sorry about the waiting. I can see you spawning back there. Don't you dare. I'm pretty sure this is an inside left turn that we have here. I still can't seem to find like the developer's like official Discord. I have so many other games that there are actual good public Discords for, and this is not one of them. And there's a bunch of private ones that I know of, but I'm not super sure about. So I part of me wants to like turn the light on in front of me so my face is more illuminated, but because of that out of sequence frequency that the LED is emitting at, it Volvo, I'm at a dead stop already. Can you please get over? Like, actually lighting my face will end up making the stream look crappier. So, I apologize for the darkness. Oh boy. Somebody caused an accident. Hi guys. How's it going? Lol. You want the most obvious show of how broken the AI is in this game, you just got it right there. So, I think my favorite places really to drive has always really been 93 and 95. That's Nevada and California respectively. I believe 95 is in the cleft between the Sierra Nevadas. Like to your east is the Nevada line, right on the other side of basically the line of mountains. If you're driving south, Nevada's to your left, and it's literally that close, but the valley is so massive that you could you could take an entire day walking, no, multiple days possibly, walking from one side of the valley to the other, and you would spend an entire day just driving down through that, and it's absolutely gorgeous because there's just mountains, like rocky-sized mountains looming high on either side, and then you have like Mammoth Lake. There are places, there's so many places around there that I really badly wanted to actually get off the beaten path for, but a lot of the width of the road and the strength of the asphalt was very, very limited. So I couldn't. There were so many places in like Eastern California that I really wanted to get out. I still have my inbuilt like hatred for like suburbanite people. Like, oh, but we have Big Pine and we have. I'm like, yeah, but you are not. Do you see how you take care of Los Angeles? Why do you deserve to have Inyo and Redwood National Park? Like, why do you get Inyo National Forest and all this stuff when you treat Los Angeles way? Like, you try to virtue signal with these huge alpine like nature reserves and stuff, and then you have somewhere that's in the condition of that's in those conditions. like, you seen the pollution? Have you seen the pollution? Okay, on a bad day, you can see Los Angeles's pollution in the air from hundreds of miles. Depending on the day, it can be anywhere from 300 to 100 miles away. And it's a brown halo. Now, you'll notice this if you came down I-5 and you came through Sacramento and you've been past San Diego, Los Angeles, and, San Francisco. Every single one of those major cities on the Californian coast is surrounded by one of those dirty, brown, smoky halos. And that's all the time. So you can kind of understand my contempt for like people thinking that, oh, we're being a green environment. You're not a green environment. You have some of the driest, most polluted, and drought, fire-prone places in the United States. And there's so much I'm not even trying to get into politics. I'm just on a practical municipal level that is just absolutely garbage about California, and it's aggravating. Trying to Mustang, why are you braking? I'm sorry, I'm so used with the oversized to have like the lift trucks and stuff that have those really wide tires on them that I instinctively, when I'm pulling oversized, like ride over the line and near the rumble strip so that the tires aren't extending out into the traffic lane, or the opposing traffic lane, sorry. Oh yeah. This is a nice drive. We're almost done. I'm gonna get off after this, but I'll try to put some resources down in the description about good channels or other information about stuff like endorsement tests and other helpful things for new drivers, if I can find them, because it's important to get the word out there. I've talked in other videos about mental health in the trucking industry, and this is just like then. This is not the kind of job you want to be into if you have issues with depression and suicidal ideation, because you are incredibly isolated if you make the mistake of going into an OTR position when you are not all there for it and able to function well on your own and independently. It can be the scariest thing in your entire life, and I've dealt with many a driver that has straight up just abandoned their unit, got a rental to a plane, and flew home and left the industry. So, yeah. You gotta fend for yourself. You've got to find good people here and find people that will actually work with you and, kind of keep you in line while actually like teaching you something. I don't know how much I can really teach. This game doesn't have quite enough detail to really explain the ins and outs of like inspections and other things like that. I don't know. BeamNG might actually. So that might be something, because you can actually open the hood and do different things with it. I could actually talk a little bit more in detail, because I'm not currently working as a truck driver right now. So I don't have a powered unit right next to me that I can sit there and point out, this is the castellated nut on the pitman arm, on the steering gear. I don't have a good resource for that. So A lot of this stuff, the game, like you really like a lot of the stuff that I do on here is aesthetics. I have used fast money and fast XP mods on this game. I have. But if you look at my income and you look at my experience per load, you know that I don't do that all the time or on the same accounts. I have used XP and money on this account to rebuild previous drivers when I wanted a new driver, but I'm not interested in trying to game the system and make myself a divine god without actually putting the work in. So I'm not going to lie about it and say that I haven't used them on short term to like kind of get my profile back into shape because of like cloud desync and other issues with, you know, save files. But yeah, a lot of what I have in this game, if you couldn't already tell, is either graphical, skin related. Unfortunately, a lot of people that are in playing this game don't run a lot of these aesthetic mods, so I'll take a look at them before I get off so we can at least get a little overview of what I'm running here. Some of them you can already tell. I really do like having the little extra personalizations for inside the cab because it's just a nice touch. Makes it a little bit more lively. I'm only sad because like some of them are specific to certain makes and models of truck. Like I could get the Imperial symbol from Skyrim and from Morrowind and Oblivion as one of the hanging ornaments, and you can't, even though you can get like the Star Wars related stuff like what's there on the dashboard. You can get those on all trucks, so there's some things that it's hit or miss that it's on, it isn't on others. I'm kind of sad because one of the really big graphics mods that was for this went down and became incompatible about 2 updates ago, or 2 iterations ago of updates. And I don't know if that mod developer is still is planning on updating that to the current build. I don't know if they are because there was a major overhaul that came in with one of the most recent DLCs. Where is that? Is that Montana? Yeah, it might be Montana. So there's some stuff coming in that might have broken a lot of internal like file distribution and just like you'd be amazed like I'm not a web developer, a game developer at all, but when you're a modder, all it takes, say like for it to destroy a lot of mods, is for the developer to do something nice, like they make a very specific piece of code or the hierarchy in the save file system more efficient, and they make the distribution of like objects in the map and how it loads up more efficient. But that one modification to the core code of the game like in some cases, like I'm talking about this, I'm referencing from the off-road simulator SnowRunner, where the developers changed and made the save file system and the loading system way more efficient. But like in my case, it went in I'm 31. Depends on the lighting and where I am. For some reason, people think that I'm in my early 20s, and I'm not. And my goofiness and my rather immature demeanor always has people assuming that I'm younger than I am. I don't know. Being too mature all the time gets people to expect too much out of you. Especially when your sense of humor is already very dumb to begin with and very juvenile. Giving the false idea that you're a very stern, serious person is kind of like not a good idea. I'm not a very self-serious person. Oh, but of course. Is there an actual... No, you're gonna make me... I hate this. Like, this is the first time in the game that it has bothered pulling me across the traffic lane. And how much do you want to bet that it's gonna spawn a crazy amount of traffic both ways? I hate scales in this game for two reasons. Because they're always red. There's no like scoring system. I don't think there's a subsystem that allows you to. I see that Crown Vic. Is it gonna pull past? All right, yeah, we can get over it. No, that was a Taurus. Sorry. And one, they don't have a safety system in here as far as like your rating and your safety with your loads and lack of accidents like the real thing has. It's also that a very large majority of the actual scales in this game don't exist anymore. A lot of them up here in like rural Idaho and rural Washington State, Montana, Oklahoma, North and South Dakota, Colorado, they don't exist. They either get converted into pull-offs for trucks or just outright shut down altogether. And then some of them are only open during critical times, during like specific like snow conditions and other things like that. So my little side gripe. Oh, but I was talking about the fact that like as a modder, all it takes is for the developers to do something that's actually nice, and it can completely throw off what modders are doing. So I get this weird impression with some of the graphics mods that a bunch of stuff might have been broken recently because of SCS making improvements to some kind of internal system in the game's code. So there's a highly likely chance that a lot of the really good graphical mods are, like the only ones that I know of in here, got broken by recent developments on SCS's part. So that's a very good chance, because I had a mod on here before that had better like volumetric fog that kind of made, they need more like properly implemented fog in here to convey distance, because like even here in my game it probably looks okay on YouTube and looks okay in the stream, but on screen, even at 1080p, even with me like sitting 3 feet away from my monitor, it is very easy to tell that the background textures are extremely flat. And getting a better fog system implemented, as it actually exists, because if you're out in these alpine regions on the west coast, there is a lot of haze even during the winter. Like, well, like you'd think, oh, haze with heat. I'm like, no, it's summer and winter year round. It's just the fact that you have a river, you have usually rapids, you have other things throwing water vapor and other stuff into the air. It's not even unclean air, it's just the nature of what it is. So getting a better fog system implemented into this would give the game visual depth that it really has never had. I've looked for mods that were related to fog density and depth, and it just there isn't anything on the workshop that really seems to make it look like, give it the depth. Everything, that's another thing, is this game looks too damn clean. Like, have you ever been on rundown roads in rural Ohio and Indiana and Illinois? That stuff is run down, it's dusty, it's dirty. If you're in cities, it's polluted as hell. There's road dust like everywhere that's thick enough that you can like stain your hands with it from like asphalt on the roadway. It is dirty. And there are so many places that I look, especially in like California in this game, like, it's too frickin' clean and green. LA is not green. Not like this. Like, I only see grass. Like, the only grass that I ever saw for the most part when in the entirety of working like 5 years constantly over the road coming in and out of California, the only places I saw grass was in business parks and industrial parks where it was being maintained and paid for by the companies around there, and it was all for facing. But you go into even some of the nicer like suburban middle class neighborhoods in LA, there isn't grass, and if it is, it's dead. So when I get in this game and we go to LA, right, I come in this game and like there's a bunch of green. Like, there's no green here. The entire time you drive from like Barstow or Needles until you reach the metro areas is yellow or a very tan white color of like the dry brush out there. So it's like, it just doesn't look right. It's too green. And now I'm saying that without the advanced vegetation mod on, it still looks too green. in a lot of parts of California because of just what they chose to implement. So I probably shouldn't be saying as much because I don't know what country of origin the studio for SCS is. So I could be talking out my ass because they could be from, Germany or even England or something like that, and they have a completely different sensibility as far as this stuff. And then some of the measurements and issues with infrastructure on the American maps would make a little bit more sense because I don't know what's going on there. There are some times when when I hit my brakes, it like puts it in reverse almost, and I'm not holding them and just tap it, but that's besides the point. I think that's a problem with my controller more than anything else. Well, I appreciate it. I don't stream all the time, and I don't know if I'll always be streaming this game. Like I've worked in this industry for so long that I like this game. I enjoy having my own truck in the world of the game, but it can also be very tedious for me. And another problem is that people like playing in convoys. Some of them dick around too much, or they just take loads that I'm not interested in. Like, I'm still trying to level up, and unfortunately, some of the highest experience in paying loads are the oversized like this. And some of it I did say was unrealistic, because there's oversized loads that, honest to God, pay 600 or 700 grand in real life for their transportation. And this game doesn't give you anything. Like, I have to cover 1,200 miles to get 100K on something, when the insurance costs on like this D9 that I've got here on my flatbed, the insurance costs on this alone would probably be more than 100K. Like this thing probably has at least 250, like not even that. Like this thing probably has over $1 million in insurance protection on it. I don't even know how much the actual piece of equipment costs, but I know that it's more than my truck and my trailer. Because like even with this primo stocked out, this truck would cost around, I guess, anywhere from $195,000 to $250,000. The trailers could be anywhere from like, well, I'm talking standard trailers, unfortunately. These specialized trailers like this could easily be as much as the tractor is. Common trailers cost about the same as a decent car, like a nice car, like anywhere from $27,000 to like $40,000 for an actual like dry van or reefer, like a new one. I don't know how much they sell for used. I just knew from picking up actual shipments of new trailers from manufacturers like Utility what they go for up front. So I apologize if it's just like, why are you always just talking about new prices? I'm like, because I was a corporate driver. I never actually had a need to know any of this information, so. I'm glad I'm in the last 200 miles, because I am absolutely zonked. Yeah, I'm just going to go up to this delivery in northern Idaho and then get off. There's a chance I'm going to smack the guardrail here, because I'm really trying to keep that swing, that return swing, because the arch and the cut of the trailer is still, I think it's got about a 7 to 8 foot differential between the swing of the primary, because it doesn't work like pup trailers. With pup trailers, wherever the drives go, the pup will follow, and then the following trailer will follow. With this, it's got a little bit more resistance. The first set on here is going to turn in after the drives, and because of how many tires there are, the way it articulates is slower and will follow in an awkward pattern, so it's a little bit more tricky. If you've ever dealt with pup trailers or seen pup trailers, they actually can fit in some pretty tight spaces and make some pretty tight turns because of the way that the dolly works. Because the dolly is usually just a single axle and can pretty much rotate a full 180 degrees side to side and turn around itself. sometimes way tighter and faster than the truck physically can anyways. So that's a big factor here in the game. If you ever start doing oversized, I don't know, just to start, you might want to turn off traffic if you can, just so you can extend out, because like there's certain things, like the big box style, like when you have a big generator or something that's extending out 4 or 5 feet, you will have to cover an entire intersection for one to make a right hand turn, but you will have to swing wide to like by an extra, you know 7 to 8 feet just to also clear the street lights and the traffic lights. So stuff like this little guy right here are actually pretty easy to handle. Because like you can see here, there's enough space on the inside that I can come a little bit out. When you're running traffic, you have to pay attention to like when the traffic is coming, the oncoming traffic is there, because you can use the openings in that oncoming traffic to just kind of let the trailer lull out a bit, and by the time that you execute and come around said corner, the trailer will be back in your traffic lane again. I don't know. As far as like game settings, I wouldn't suggest running this game with traffic violations on. The system is too incongruent and doesn't really reflect the nature of actual law enforcement interactions with trucks, because like I've never gotten ticketed for running a red light while I was loaded and I couldn't stop fast enough. I don't get pulled over for speeding, considering how much I've actually done it in real life constantly. The way the game system works, it just responds. Oh yeah, it was still in the back of the pickup. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, traffic tickets in this game make no sense. Like, miraculously, some unmarked police car will pull you over on some back roads interstate for going, 5 over the speed limit. So, oh, we are almost done. Yeah, for in here.
Yeah, these are mold free and they're clear. So okay.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. I'm gonna take a look really quick one more time at the turns. I mean, you guys call, oh, but it's a map, dude. I'm like, well, I'm not looking at the map for, to look at the map. I'm looking at where I have all my 90s and all these really oblique turns. Is it? It's a little township. It is going into. Is that an intermodal point? I think it is an intermodal point. Methinks this is going to be an awkward corner. I really wish I wouldn't be as uptight and angry about the oversized parking if it wasn't for the fact that a lot of the locations are dead ends, which doesn't really reflect reality very much, because most of the places I see this stuff getting unloaded and loaded onto these flatbeds are just gravel lots, and they're big open spaces. Again, for dropping the head of the gooseneck and then dropping sections of the trailer, because like this D9 that's currently no, don't do that. The D9 that's currently on my flatbed. Can you not? I just saw what you did there. I said twice, don't snap my map, and I didn't even hit anything, and it still put a nav point across the street from where it needed to be. Okay? Like, this was loaded by dropping the neck off of that flatbed in the middle, and this was driven onto it. So, that means that this entire assembly had to be broken into like 3 separate parts to be moved. And honestly, I've seen these. They have to set the first under they have to put that. They have to put this. They have to back this section, lock its 5th wheel in, and after everything's assembled, then you finally lock in at the front. So this, like, assembling one of these big trailers is way more tedious than the game likes to let on. And there's a lot more. Delivering them is a lot, and loading them is a lot more simple in real life than it is in game. So I could rant about this all day. I could rant about oversized transportation all day in this game, because not because of the actual road mechanics and physics mechanics, it's just because of the parking and unloading stuff. It's like, ooh. Yeah. I think if I can really kind of get it together, I'll try to convoy with some people in the future here. Yeah, like I said earlier, unfortunately, I think the American Truck Simulator is just on this iteration. Is just on PC. There might be a version that's on the Xbox One X and S on the current gen of consoles, but I'm not sure, because I'm still, because my job focus has shifted to stuff that's more local and at home, and I'm not an OTR driver anymore. I used consoles a lot when I was driving because it's very easy to, with the amount of power that they require and a TV, it's very easy to fit a really decent 4K 33-inch TV and like a PS4 Pro in there. I haven't updated because I haven't been working in conditions where I'm using a console again. So I'm still sitting with a PS4 Pro, which honestly is, like, for a lot of the stuff that I play on here, is absolute garbage. Just because of the system structuring and the fact that it's an APU instead of a full integrated system. But so is the Xbox, so I don't know what I'm saying when I mention that. So I really hope this hasn't been a boring run for anybody. I've been on here since 1 o'clock or so. If you're just coming in, I talked a lot earlier in the stream about kind of very early experiences as a commercial truck driver, what to expect in school, payment, contracts. But I kind of ramble, so it's kind of I'm pretty sure it's hard to follow sometimes. I also talked a little bit about health insurance and personal safety and security. I've had friends in the industry, female drivers, that they're always looking over their shoulder, and we've talked about how they keep themselves safe, watch themselves in public, places that it's safe to park and sensible. I haven't talked about places that outlaw parking on off-ramps, but I would really have to look around. I know definitely off the top of my head, Tennessee is a butthole about parking on and off ramps. You will see them everywhere, and there are places that it really is a ball buster, especially if you're down near like Chattanooga, and you're going south and to try to go into Georgia and North Carolina, South Carolina. There's a lot of places there where people run out of time, and I have almost violated hours of service multiple times just because of traffic conditions, and then being stuck in an area where it's after 8 p.m. All the truck stops are full, and there's nowhere to pull off because they won't let you pull off because it's Tennessee and they legislate against it. It's just so. It is a thing, by the way. There are certain states that are kind of borderline predatory about where trucks can and can't be. But it is really important to understand we are not light vehicles. We do actually physically damage roads and infrastructure by our existence. We exert 400 times the amount of wear on the road to any other vehicle. Like, even the largest pickups and SUVs do not come anywhere near the damage that our frames and our rolling extent does, because of the rolling resistance our tires have. And you're going from a vehicle that has like I don't know, like maybe 600 to 800. Oh, well, I missed that scale house. Whoop-de-doo. Oh my god, is it gonna make me stay for it? Just send me a ticket, game. I am too big to try to force over 2 lanes and come back. Yeah, I don't have traffic violations on. I think that if I haven't ran with it through scale houses before, but I'm pretty sure it would have assigned a ticket right there. So, watch for wildlife. I thought it said wildfire from the distance. Oh no, please don't tell me I have a closure up in front. No, it's going westbound. So we don't have any interruptions here. I feel bad because I'm not, like, when I'm talking, I'm, like, not quite zoned in completely on the game, so I'm not doing alternate camera angles and other things like that, so I feel like it's kind of a boring watch. Because I reflexively go to cab view and use my rear view mirrors as a point of reference. So... yeah, oversized in this game is not hard to handle on the road. It really comes down to there's a differential in the way that the trailers are gonna come around corners, but it depends. It really has more to do with what's on the trailer. Like with this, that caterpillar that's on this flatbed does not extend more than like 2 feet off the deck, so I'm not having to make as extreme of movement changes and like turn cutting changes as I would with other oversized stuff. But this game, I also don't understand why it doesn't allow extreme loads, like you have to be with the AI escorts in order to do like extreme heavy duty stuff, which kind of takes the fun out of it. And the reality of it is that there's stuff all the time that runs around locally unescorted that's even bigger than that. And some of the oversized loads I don't get. Helicopters don't get transported by truck from a manufacturing facility or one place to the other. They usually get moved by train. Especially like the Chinook that they always show as the super oversized model. That you're always pulling around. I'm like, I've never in my life actually seen a military or utility like size helicopter on the back of a flatbed or on this kind of stuff. I've seen like normal like life flights and like normal commercial helicopters and like traffic helicopters and stuff like that, and even stuff like military CH-60s, you know, or SH-60. I can't remember what the branches are specific. I've seen those on flatbeds, but I've never seen like something the size of a Chinook or a CH-53, like the Sea Stallions. I've never seen those on a flatbed. So yeah, some of the stuff that they give for loads in this game doesn't make much sense. So got another 5 or 10 minutes to go to this delivery. I've hoped this wasn't absolutely too insanely boring, and that I kind of got some information out if you're interested in truck driving in real life. Some of the implementation of the fatigue and stuff in this game is a little too wonky, and it doesn't convey the reality of what actual hours of service and your rest breaks and everything. It doesn't quite hit it right, and some of the interactions with companies and the way loads work and other stuff is a little bit weird. It's close. It's really close in a lot of areas, but then there's some simple architectural things about the design of areas in the game that aren't quite right, both from physically being there and understanding what the layout of the properties were, and just other small practical things. So I really like this game, but a lot of the fatigue with it for me comes from doing this as a job and losing interest in it sheerly because it's like doing my job. For people that don't do this for work, this might be really fun and interesting and engaging because it gives you a chance to, work with equipment you might not otherwise do. But the banality of having to do a 200 point, pre-inspection, do your, preventative maintenance work on the trucks, it all becomes very mundane and very grating. Like, it just becomes the mush of what your workday is. So it loses its appeal. I'm also like aware that if I run any of the music, it's getting content ID'd, but I don't know if it's on a certain time frame or a certain part of the live stream. Once I figured that out, I might run music again, but it's slapped like 10 separate tracks on content ID. So it was like the first 30 or 40 minutes of the stream last time. It was content ID, content ID, content ID. All right, we are almost done with this. I don't run with high beams. I've never, like, even in real life, because of the design of most interstates and stuff, they've got sequential road markings, indicators, markers, mile markers. Even out here, there's a lot of reflective surfaces that aren't quite rendered as well as they are in real life, but the amount of times that you're going to have an opportunity on most, like, East Coast or like central highways, interstates, is going to be very rare because you're always going to have a truck in front of you or another vehicle within, like, 200 feet of you, unless you're working in the wee hours of the day or night. And it's very rare also to be on a rural highway or interstate where you're out of sight of oncoming traffic for less than, you're usually getting passed every 5 to 20 seconds from the opposing lane. So I've just never gotten into the habit of using my my high beams even as a commercial driver, unless I'm in these very specific settings. Like, even like this, the visibility is really high and I can see those signs marking the curve of the turn from a pretty good distance. When I'm in places like in real life, the places you'd see me using high beams would be in places like rural Pennsylvania, really tight winding roads. The trees are up like literally just a few feet off of the asphalt and very close, tucked in, very tight little winding hairpin turns, or just alternating turns. Like, the times that it's very rare where I need the strength of the high beams in a commercial vehicle, because they already sit up so high in reality. Like most personal vehicles, the headlights are sitting a foot and a half, 2 feet off the ground, and on most trucks it's like 4 feet or so, maybe 3 feet, 4 feet. So just by virtue of how high they're sitting off the surface of the road, they carry out way and farther in front of you. Like right now, I can see the street lights up about that was about a quarter mile out. Like, I'm already aware of everything around me, and unless somebody came into my rear view, I don't need any more light. I don't need extra light. I'm using that truck in front of me right now as an extension of my eyes. If I see him make weird, erratic movements or put his signal on or start braking, I'm going to use him as kind of a sonar of sorts out in front of me to kind of see what traffic is doing. Like, if he's leading me around a corner and I just, it's stuff like that that can also reduce your cognitive load in reality. Um, Using other vehicles to kind of be your eyes and ears and use them to anticipate certain things. It's very helpful in like windy suburban areas like in New York City, where you might have an oblique turn that goes off, like in Brooklyn, where it just comes off to a left or a right really abruptly, and you can tell where braking is going to happen. Or if you're like, same example from the same area, like being up on like 287, like if you're coming around near like downtown Brooklyn, you can kind of already see, traffic will be backed up around a corner, and using stuff in front of you that can see 30 or 40 feet ahead of you will like give you early warning before you even see the slowdown. But it's also really just useful to pay attention to the trucks at a great distance from you, because they can kind of extend your ability to see. So useful to know. Kind of went off a tangent there, but yeah. I've used my high beams more in my personal vehicles than I ever have as a commercial driver, just because of how high they already sit naturally. And your high beams, the intensity difference between high beams and low beams on trucks is very minimal. There's a slightly different pitch angle, and probably like a 20 or 30% increase in your overall visibility. Like most of these Cascadias, like this Freightliner right here, the Western Star that I'm driving, the Volvos that I've driven in real life, they have their high and low beam split in the same module, and both of them are running when you're in high beam. So you're still using it adds an additional 20 to 25% coverage and a little bit more height. Whereas like with like a personal vehicle, like my personal vehicle, the level of the high beam is dramatically higher. Like the actual angle will bring up the high beam angle, like, I don't know, probably about 8-9 feet into the air. So it's not just shining, it's shining farther up and out at the same time. So that was a rabbit trail. All right. Would talk about more. I don't know what kind of subjects to talk about here. I don't like getting into politics too much because it's kind of subjective, and I don't know if it's exactly the most interesting. Like, politics is so anger and emotion inducing. I don't. For me personally, it's just like I have to walk away from it for so much time, because there's so much frustration, aggravation, and anger in politics that it's like, there was a time that I'd like to be involved in it, and it's burned me out more than truck driving ever could, because people are so hyperbolistic about it. Like, there's so much hyperbole about politics in general that it's just ridiculous. Like how much people are testing each other, and the amount of disrespect that goes on in the world over this crap. Like, I'm liberal, like not lefty liberal, just liberal in the actual traditional sense. I have very left-leaning friends that we don't talk about politics. We talk about our shows, we talk about our interests, and we stay the frickin' hell away from our politics. Because, well, but there's also things we agree on too, but like I never try to get into hardcore political arguments with my friends, because it just doesn't interest me. It doesn't feel intellectually stimulating to talk about politics. Like volunteer work and that kind of stuff, that sounds genuinely interesting and something that I'd like to be part of, but politics in general, local politics even, it just, and that makes it scarier now with the political climate, is trying to get involved with local politics. People are going to know where you live, know what subdivision you're in. People might come to your house. And where I live in Virginia, like, there's no castle doctrine, so you are supposed to flee your property, you know, instead of staying and defending yourself. So that's great. I don't know. Just politics in general are just. I guess I could stop at this. I don't know if this viewpoint is on the roadway or what. Where is it at? I guess. Yeah, I'll run it. This is gonna look super stupid, but we're right on our delivery point, so I'll just run this real quick for achievement's sake. Nah, this would be a Loves or a Circle K if it was this size. I've only been in a few places where pilots are that small. I don't think I've ever seen a Flying J that's that size, so they probably should just swap that skin next to where I'm at. A little bit with something more sensible, because there's pilots and Loves country stores that are that small, but not Flying J. Alright, we are almost there, thankfully. Again, if you've watched my streams, I am the most boring as hell person to watch because I don't really get into accidents or do crazy stuff on these jobs. It's an unfortunate side effect of, one, just not feeling like it because I did it for work, and because of that work experience, you know, I know how to properly cut and turn with these big trailers. So, it can get kind of boring. Appreciate you hanging out with me, Jake. And one of my nephews pops in from time to time and says hi. So, hope you guys are having a good day, though. And I guess I'll get. I wanted to run over what I'm running as far as my mods are. Most of the stuff that I'm running is pretty much purely cosmetic. So I've got a couple of tweak stuff in here. It's small tweaks. A lot of it, like you really can only effectively run one physics mod at a time, so there's quite a few out there. A lot of them are good, but I'm not sure each one is up to date with the current build of American Truck Simulator, so I'd be very aware of what build number they're on if you're getting one of the physics mods, but it really makes a difference. For me personally, I don't like the way that the standard physics in the game works, because there's a sidle and there's a resistance that the trucks have when you're turning, that you like the turns in particular, and the suspension rebound and the way that the truck pivots on its axis based on its movement or speed is just not there with the standard vanilla physics. So if you want the real experience, that's one helpful thing to do, because the suspension has its own characteristics. Though I don't think it's as granular as whether it's a air suspension or spring, like leaf spring suspension. A lot of base model trucks have leaf spring suspension. I don't know, like besides one of my previous companies, I don't know a lot of companies that run forward air, like forward air suspension. They tend to run leaf or some kind of interlocking suspension on the front end of most trucks. On a commercial level, I have seen leaf spring. It's really common to see leaf spring suspension on trailers, but almost all tractors universally have air because of locking, like because of our fifth wheels and the way that you're going to hook up to most common trailer types. You're gonna hook up to by a fifth wheel under the similar circumstances. And if you're a corporate driver, you're gonna want the trailer to be lower, so it's really easy to tell when you're hooked up and connected, and so on. So all right, we're here. Is this the turn? Oof. I am already not liking this. Oh, thanks, policeman. What are you gonna do when I hit you with the swing of this trailer, huh? Bro. Well, fine, come with me. It'll be a nice ride.
You have arrived at your destination.
Beauty of having traffic violations turned off, because that's a cop. I already have a sneaking suspicion the parking space is immediately to my right in here. Let's see. Yep. I'm gonna try. I'm really gonna try, but because that fence is right there, you can't hyperextend and cross over as much as you would in reality. So I don't know. Well, we can try. We can honestly try. Well, wait. Oh, this map, this one doesn't have one. That actually is really helpful. There's another delivery point for Lieber or these heavy locations. That is the inner city one that has a fence right here next to the drop point. It's really, this is very hard to like explain because you're trying to lead that second set of tires, like that additional set of because I can't call it tandems because tandems is referring to a very specific type of trailer setup. But you're trying to aim that primary front set on the trailer as far to the outside of the parking as you're trying to get, because the rear end is going to follow it with about a like 2 or 3 feet difference. So like right here with that ability to extend further out, it was really easy for me to get into this space. But you're mainly focusing to get this trailer in line with these oversized trailers with these multi-point, multi-fifth wheel, is you're trying to get to that that forwardmost set of the trailer's tires all the way to the outside of that curve. And a lot, if you saw at the beginning of this stream, I couldn't on initial approach actually get the trailer correctly in place. So when you do this, you want to focus on that first set, on getting it to the outside of the parking space. Well, there it's your left or your right. So, alrighty, let's get this big boy dropped. And, alright. Yeah, we got additionals there for long distance bonus. I could have gone higher and bigger, but I didn't see running an extra in real life 30 minutes for an extra like 20 or 30 grand in game. So it's like So yeah, there's another turn in for long distance. I might stream when I do my next run. Yeah, I'm going to back off to the launch pad here and just kind of take a look at what mods that I've been running on here, if you're wondering. If not, it's fine. I just figured I'd at least show it. I might even list it in the description if you guys really wanted to know. Yeah. A good thing to know if you guys haven't done modding before, there's a hierarchy to these mods as far as I'm pretty sure if I'm remembering correctly, it starts with backgrounds like environmental backgrounds, skyboxes, sound fixes, which you can see here because I've got Tempest Night background mod, sound fixes pack for ATS, improved train sounds, engine sounds for the V&L 660 through 860s, other engine effect sounds. I don't know why advanced vegetation got bumped in priority. That's supposed to be right here. Coyote's air brakes. Yeah, my former company. I have my own tiff with them, but that's for other reasons. There's small stuff in here. Otherwise, but sound, backgrounds, and environmental stuff that isn't models, top of the priority list. I'm pretty sure, I think maps are at the bottom. So backgrounds, sound, graphics, so that's why you see all of this HDR, vegetation, and like graphical related stuff is all grouped around the same stuff. UI elements and tuning, I put that around with graphical. Again, like this is also graphical. And then physics, they said, was supposed to be in a very specific place. And then so it's background, sound, graphical, tuning parts, and then trucks, traffic and AI mods, and then I think the lowest point is maps here. So the only one, I think the only key ones that you really want to know about is like the enhanced vegetation is good, realistic rain, real snow, weather and effects mods. That's the black sky fixes for some of the skybox mods. These are really handy. I don't need a high profile UI, and the default mirrors and stuff are really big. The flat UI, Cecil's flat UI here, as you can see, drops everything down across the bottom, centers the navigation, and then puts your mirrors smaller and up out of the way. It's just more minimalistic. I think there's different adjustments for that. I really liked adding better effects to the headlights and to their kind of reflection and shine. There is a couple tuning parts in here. I have stuff for like a C18, one of the older big boy cats, stuff for my 49X that I'm running already, the drivetrains on the V&Ls that I've used previously, little light fixes like strobes and other stuff that I put on here, more stuff related specifically to 49X, traffic AI, traffic density, and then I have a bunch of stuff here that's like the UPS, U-Haul, FedEx vans, other delivery companies, like municipal police, some fun stuff, anime stuff here. But then you have like the real brand trailer skins, own companies, real logos and billboards. I just like this stuff. The only time it becomes immersion breaking is when you have like Walmart DCs that look like they're for a general service. So most of the stuff is tweak stuff. Some of these things I don't have gotten bumped out of order because like this realistic road should be up in the graphics subsection at the top, so should be somewhere up here. Yeah, with enhanced vegetation. I'd have to do a review of it over again, but that's a lot of it. Some of this is just tertiary stuff. Like I said, I don't have them on here anymore, but I did have Fast XP and other mods on here at one point. I'm not gonna lie about that. I have used them, but I don't use them currently right now as I'm streaming. So, but this is just this is an overview of really what I've got on here. I don't think I have any mods that I don't run, except for I was having issues with this doing weird stuff between the mod dealer and the normal dealers, which I try to make sure that they're parsed apart. And then this has to do with gas prices, but a lot of that is just economy related, and I didn't think it was necessary. But most of the stuff I have, I run. So, but alrighty. Appreciate that you've been hanging out with me, and I'm gonna go ahead and jump off of here because I need to get something to eat. But you have a good one, and I hope some of the information, at least at the start of the stream, might help somebody out. And you guys be safe out there. Bye.